So it's definitely one thing to encounter an unexplainable creature on the outside of your house, but it's a whole other to encounter that creature on the inside of your house. Tonight's story has scared me so bad that I'm actually filming during the day because I don't want to film this alone at night. So with that being said, grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary Appalachian story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story comes from Ella. Hi Savannah, I really wanted to send you my story of the time that I saw a mimic in my house. This happened about 5 years ago, and this encounter is actually what made my husband and I move out of the Appalachian Mountains altogether. I had just gotten out of the shower one evening and was standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom brushing my hair. My husband comes in there to tell me that he needed to run to town to grab something. I kissed him goodbye and told him to be careful and that I would see him in a little while. I could hear him walk down the hall, through the kitchen, and out the front door, closing the front door behind him. About 5 minutes later, I'm standing in the bathroom still, and as I was brushing my teeth, I could hear the front door open and close. I had just assumed that it was my husband coming back to grab something that he forgot. I could hear footsteps walking through the kitchen and starting down the hallway, but the footsteps sounded a lot louder than my husband's footsteps do. My mind instantly started racing with the thought that someone else had just come into the house. I got this wave of uneasiness that came over me, and it spooked me so bad that I shut and locked the bathroom door. I stood there just listening to the footsteps, when eventually the footsteps stopped right in front of the bathroom door, and that's when the door handle to the bathroom started to shake like someone was trying to open the door. My husband always calls me Ella May, and he's the only one that ever calls me that. I heard my husband's voice say, "Ella May, it's me, open the door." It sounded just like my husband, but something told me do not open that door. I said back to him, "I'm in the middle of something, I can't get to the door. Is everything okay?" And again, in my husband's voice, I heard him say, "I forgot my wallet, I came back to grab it." Before I could even answer him back, I heard the footsteps walking away from the bathroom door. At the time, I couldn't figure out why I felt so uneasy, but when I heard my husband's voice, it sounded just like him, and I thought I was being paranoid. So I opened the bathroom door and stepped out into the hallway and started to walk toward my bedroom where my husband typically keeps his wallet. I figured that if he forgot it, he would be in there grabbing it. As I'm walking toward my bedroom, I hear footsteps behind me, and when I turn around, I do see my husband standing there, but the way he was standing just seemed a little off to me. He was standing there staring at me like he was looking through my soul. I asked if he was okay and if he had grabbed his wallet. He looked at me and said he couldn't find it. I glanced over my shoulder into our room and could see on his nightstand that his wallet wasn't there. When I turned my head back toward him, I don't know how this is possible, but he was closer to me. I didn't hear him move at all, and my head was turned for maybe 3 seconds. This unsettled me in the worst way possible. In that moment, I felt so unsafe that I told my husband I have to finish brushing my teeth. So I stepped back into the bathroom and shut and locked the door. I could hear footsteps walking down the hallway back toward the bathroom where I was. I started scanning the bathroom trying to find my phone, but I realized I left it in my room. The footsteps again stopped right in front of the bathroom door, and the door handle started to shake like someone was trying to open it. That's when I hear a car door slam shut from outside. The footsteps I heard earlier turned into running back down the hall toward the kitchen. But this didn't sound like footsteps running. It sounded like something was galloping. I know that's not the best description, but that's the best way that I can describe it. Imagine if someone was on all fours galloping down the hall. That's what it sounded like. I then heard the front door open and close, and I heard my husband's voice again say, "Hey babe, I'm back." And at this point, I'm terrified to open the door because what if it wasn't my husband? I heard footsteps coming toward the bathroom door again, and this time it sounded like my husband's normal footsteps. I said, "Babe, is that you?" And he said, "Yes, honey, I'm back." The door handle to the bathroom door started to move, and my husband said, "Did you mean to leave the back door open?" I instantly got tears in my eyes because I hadn't even been on that side of the house since my husband left. and the back door of the house is maybe 10 feet away from the front door. So when my husband left to go to the store, he would have saw the back door open and shut it. I said that definitely wasn't me. My husband could hear the fear in my voice, and he used his car key to unlock the bathroom door to get to me. When he came in, I knew instantly it was him. I felt safe and comforted by his presence, and that definitely wasn't the case for whatever I encountered just a few minutes earlier. I was sobbing, telling him what had just happened, and the look on his face is something I'll never forget. He seemed very shaken by what I was telling him, and what he told me next ended up being the final straw that led us to leave the Appalachian Mountains altogether. He told me that a few weeks earlier, while I was at work, he was in the garage organizing some things. That's when from inside the house he said he heard me call his name. My car obviously wasn't in the driveway, so he immediately got freaked out, thinking something was wrong. He said he walked into the house and called my name, and he heard me on the other end of the house call his name and say, "I need your help." My husband said he felt so uneasy about that he got in his car and left because he knew it wasn't me that day. I personally received a call from him, and he was asking me where I was. I told him that I was at work, and he said, "Okay, I was just making sure you weren't home." I said no, and that I was at work and had been that entire morning. I even asked him while on the phone with him why he asked me that, and he said no reason, "I just thought you were home." And I didn't think any more of it until I had my own encounter with whatever that was. We ended up selling our house and moving in with my in-laws several hours away, well outside of the Appalachian Mountains. I have never in my life encountered something so strange and frightening, and I really pray we never do again. Yeah, so like I said, it's definitely one thing to encounter something on the outside of your house that's unexplainable, but it's a whole other to experience that inside your house. And I honestly think that's why this story scares me so much, is that you're in the safety of your own home. Stuff like that should not happen in your home. You're in your safe space, and you are in your bathroom doing your normal routine, and you hear that coming down the hallway. Absolutely not. But not only did you encounter that in your house and actually interact with this thing, which I believe is a mimic, but then your partner also had an experience as well. That is horrifying. But I think the cherry on top of the cake for me is the part where it calls you by what your husband calls you. Because obviously this thing has been around and it has been watching you and learning what you say. That is horrifying to me. But Ella May, I would have done exactly what you did and sold my home and left the Appalachian Mountains if not only me, but my partner went through the same thing that you went through. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, thank you so much for being here. I missed you, but I'm so glad to be back. I love you and hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
I gave a little boy who was around about 8-9 years old a lift. Little did I know he wasn't all human. Story time. So I use this route quite often. It's the most simplest and quickest route to go everywhere. On this occasion, I was going back home. It was late at night, and then I got to this road which is got like pretty much a lot of trees, no street lights, it's pitch black, nothing. So I saw something crouch on the road far from me. At first I was scared, but then again I just carried on like normal. All of a sudden I saw it stood up, and then it pointed its hand out as if it wanted a lift. So I was hesitant to stop, but then I saw that it's a little boy who was around about 8-9 years old, or probably a little bit older than that. So I stopped. He was in tears and he said he is lost and he wants to get home if I can give him a lift. I asked him where he lived and he said it's not far from here, but he will tell me. So I said okay, not a problem, hop in the car. He hopped in the car and he was sat there pretty quiet. I guess he was just nervous because I'm a stranger, or he was just scared. So I didn't really talk or ask him much question. I just carry on driving. We got to the direction where he said his house is, and then I told him that, well, we're here now so you can get in. But then I didn't hear anything, nothing. So I looked at my rear view mirror and I saw that there was no one at the back. It freaked me out. For a split second, I thought maybe he had gotten out and then, not shut the door properly. So I got out of the car and I checked, nothing. He's nowhere to be seen. I've not seen anyone gone to the door. So I actually walked to the house and knocked, and then this really old looking woman came out, and then she asked me if she can help me. I was like, well, I picked up a small boy and I told her roughly the age because, you know, and I told her whereabouts, you know, I picked him from. And then he gave me the name. But then when we got here, he wasn't there. So I wasn't sure if he's coming to the house. She started bawling it out. She started crying. And then she told me that is her son who passed away years ago. Someone hit him and run away. So he was going to a friend's house and he never made it there. And she said he never made it that far. So I saw a picture of the boy wearing same clothes hung up on the wall. And then I knew that it was actually him. But I felt so sad and sorry for the old woman. I told her that I'm leaving now. And she asked, where exactly did you say you picked him up? And I told her, but she's like, what? But he never made it far because he was going to a friend's house and he never made it far there. So guys, what did I pick home? Was it a ghost or what? I don't know, but wow.
If you grew up in Appalachia, chances are you've heard of this before. This is the type of story that gets passed down through campfires, through dinners, through hunting with your grandfather, or if you're me and my cousin, it came straight from our grandmother's mouth. Nonetheless, the warning of this story is always the same. If you hear somebody calling your name from the woods late at night, no you didn't. That's probably one of the oldest rules in the book when it comes to Appalachia. I know it might sound very dramatic from an outside standpoint, but people from Appalachia say that with a complete straight face because it's true. Honestly, it's not just one of those stories that is like, oh, this is like a funny little paranormal ghost story. No, this is one that reminds you to lock your doors at night. So the story begins somewhere around eastern Kentucky in the 1930s. Back then, life in the mountains looked very different than it does today. I'm talking about communities that were so isolated that you would have to walk miles through dense forest to reach your nearest neighbor. Once darkness fell, darkness really was upon you. There was not any streetlights or any kind of lamps or anything like that. No, you were in complete and utter darkness. Of course, you did have your little lantern, but that didn't really help much either. Darkness is so thick that it literally cuts everything beyond the lamplight. One of those small mountain communities named a young girl named Ruth. Ruth was not known to be very reckless at all. She was more known to be the curious cat. Most people stayed close to the familiar trails around the area. Ruth liked to explore. She loved to spend all of her afternoons exploring old logging roads, old trails that most people don't even dare go near. And there was this one place where people told her specifically not to go. That was a place called Dead Man's Hollow. That name alone sounds very wrong. The weird thing about that place is that nobody could ever come to an agreement about why it was called Dead Man's Hollow. But no matter what the elders told Ruth, she was not into superstitions and she just went along anyways. One evening, just before sunset, little Ruth decided that she was going to go explore Dead Man's Hollow and see for herself what this whole mystery was about. The trail leading there was this old logging road that had not been used for years. Trees had become reclaiming parts of it. There were branches just like overhanging through it. It didn't look like a road at all. At first, everything seemed completely normal. You could hear the birds settling down for the evening and the unmistakable sound of insects in the bush. As she was walking, listening to the crunching of her own feet on the gravel, she heard somebody say, "Ruth." Like anybody, that sound stopped her instantly. She stopped and she listened and she realized this voice is the voice of my mom. It wasn't just a similar sounding voice. It was the warmth of her mother's voice. It was the tone of her mother's voice. The same voice that she had heard every day for her whole entire life. There was no mistaking it for anything else. The problem was that her mother was at home nearly 2 miles away. Ruth just stood there trying to make sense of it, like, maybe she heard something else, maybe it was just the wind. Then she heard her name again, but this time it was closer than it was before. Without really thinking about it, she started walking towards the voice. Looking back on it later, Ruth said that this is when she started to feel really uneasy. Every time that she would go to walk nearer to the sound, it would just end up sounding further and further away. Nothing extremely dramatic, but just enough to where she was never able to fully reach the voice. It always sounded like it was just beyond the next ridge, just around the corner, just up a little bit further. But it never was. Somehow she kept following the voice. The deeper that she went into Dead Man's Hollow, the quieter the forest became. Birds disappeared first, then the insects, then all the other sounds. By then, the sun had completely vanished, so she was out there in the dead of night. But the voice still seemed to call her deeper and deeper into the forest, and as if she were in some kind of trance, she continued to follow the sound for hours. Then suddenly, it stopped, and Ruth found herself standing in the middle of the forest where she did not recognize anything at all. That's when she noticed something watching her. It was a woman standing between two trees several yards away from her. First glance, she looked normal, almost. She wore an old-fashioned dress that seemed decades out of place. Her skin looked unnaturally pale beneath the moonlight, and her smile was so big, it could not have been a normal person. Like, there's no way. It wasn't like cartoonishly wide, if you know what I'm saying. Like just too big, just barely too wide to make it seem uncanny valley. Then Ruth noticed the woman's eyes. They reflected the same way that a deer's eyes might in the headlights of a vehicle. Human eyes don't do that, yo. So as Ruth is just standing there staring at this thing, taking it all in, the woman speaks. She looks dead at Ruth and she says, "You aren't supposed to be here." Ruth did not stay to ask questions. She turned around and she got out of there. She did not stick around and wait like a horror movie character for any explanation at all. She ran, but she wasn't running alone. Something was following her. But according to Ruth, what was chasing after her did not sound like footsteps. It sounded like this thing was just gliding. When she got the bravery to look behind her, she saw these figures just gliding through the trees, keeping pace with her. It was weird to her because they never actually got any closer and they never actually got any further away. They literally just were keeping pace with her. By the time she finally got out of the forest, dawn was breaking. So like morning was already there. That's not even where it ends, okay? Because when Ruth gets home, her family is in hysterics. They start crying, screaming, freaking out. She just thought that it was because of all the injuries that were on her, because as she was running, she was crashing through the branches. She had scratches, bruises, cuts all over her. But that's not why they were freaking out. According to Ruth, she had only been gone for one night. According to her family, though, she had been missing for 8 days. 8 entire days. Search parties were sent out. Neighbors and community members had been combing the mountains looking for her. People started to even assume that she was dead. The local sheriff was actually beginning to, cease any kind of search party. Yet Ruth insisted that she had only been gone for a few hours. And things only got stranger upon her return. She stopped sleeping, she covered every single window in the house, and she refused to go outside after dark. Not even just go outside, she refused to look outside when it got dark. Ruth continuously would ask her family if anybody was out looking for her. And her family was confused by that, so they asked her what, and she just kept saying, the woman, is she out there? Is she looking for me? Is she coming for me? Weeks go by, and then Ruth's brother claims that he sees this woman standing at the edge of their property. A woman wearing old-fashioned clothes, just staring at the house. When he yelled at her, she just kind of vanished behind the trees. Soon neighbors began to report similar sightings, as well as hunters. Even travelers reported seeing this apparition. Children would tell stories to their parents about this woman dressed in weird clothes, smiling at them in an abnormal way from the tree line. And then one winter night, Ruth disappeared again. This time there was more evidence because this time there was fresh snow on the ground. So there was footsteps. They followed these footprints all the way to Dead Man's Hollow. Searchers followed these footprints for miles and miles and miles until randomly they just stopped. And they stopped in a place where there is nothing. It was like Ruth had taken one step and then just completely turned into dust particles. Despite extensive search efforts, Ruth was never found. Years later, hunters would still tell the story of this woman standing near Dead Man's Hollow. A pale woman in old clothing, one whose smile never looked normal. Some of them claim that if you stuck around for too long, you would hear her call your name. Never in her voice, it was always in a voice of somebody that you knew and loved. Whether that be your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your friend. Basically whatever voice it could use to make you follow it. That's why some families in Appalachia still repeat that old warning. You hear somebody calling your name late at night, you better make sure you know absolutely certain who it is. Because sometimes, according to the mountains, it's not always who you think it is.
I'm a psychic medium, and last night I had a really weird dream. It was honestly pretty scary. I dreamt that I was in my cousin's house that was very, very haunted when we were kids, and we would always see scary looking entities there. But already with this place as the setting of the dream, the vibe was kind of already off. She's an adult now, but in the dream, she was a little girl. And this dream was so vivid, it's like I was looking into a memory almost. In reality, she's only 6 years younger than me. But in the dream, she was a little girl. She was maybe 3 or 4 years old, and I was my age now. I was an adult. In the dream, she was upset about something and I was consoling her. So I was kind of just rubbing her back. I was like, what, are you tired? And she rubbed her eyes and she said, yeah, someone woke me up in the middle of the night. And then that was all she said. We kind of like forgot about the topic. And she pulled out this like leapfrog type of thing and decided that she wanted to play a game on it. And one of the games on the device was like hide and seek, and it would do like the little countdown for her to go hide and whatever. So she did the whole countdown thing, and then she ran to her bedroom to go and hide. The house that I'm talking about is like a railroad style apartment. So it's her bedroom and then her mother's bedroom. And those two rooms are specifically like the problem areas of the house. It's where the most spiritual activity occurs and where we had sightings of multiple entities as kids. Basically, I go to find her, and as soon as I open the door, her room is pitch black. And the door to her mother's bedroom is also open, and that room is dark as well. I looked directly into her mom's room, and I could see something in the darkness. Immediately, I feel like I already knew that it was something negative, and so I grabbed my Archangel Michael pendant and I just started praying in the dream. I'd also like to mention that whatever this was seemed pretty unfazed by my praying. And I've had dreams with negative entities in the past, and they'll usually get like agitated or they'll laugh when I start praying in a dream. I was saying the prayer and I kept repeating the prayer like over and over until it started to seem like I was getting whatever this thing was. I was starting to get its attention. I became so scared in the dream that my words started to become jumbled, and the words of the prayer kind of started to get mixed up. Suddenly, I got kind of like pulled towards that room. I don't know if I walked there or if I kind of just like spawned there. You know, it was a dream. But all of a sudden, I was standing in front of her mother's bedroom door. And now I could see this entity much more clearly. It was a dark figure with glowing red eyes. But the eyes were like, hold on, it's hard to explain. They were glowing red circles. Like they were like hollow on the inside. It was only like a outline of red. And there was a sigil on the side of its head, but I can't remember what the sigil looked like. It also had these really tall, pointy cat ears, which I thought was really interesting. Then, for whatever reason, I have another cousin who is the same age as the cousin that I'm talking about. They were born the same year, and we've all been very close. For whatever reason, I started calling her name into the room where that entity was. I started calling her name for her to like come out, like as if she was in the room. I was calling her to come out, like I just kept calling her and calling her and calling her, and she wasn't coming out. But this entity, this creature, was still staring at me. So I was calling her name, but she never came out because I don't think that she was in the room. So again, I'm not really sure why I was calling her name. But when she wouldn't come out, I backed away and started to leave because this thing, I think it was starting to come towards me, but it wasn't chasing me. It was very like slow and kind of still. Now the original cousin, who had initially gone to go hide, she kind of like scurried out of the room, and I backed away and I closed the door, and then I woke up. When I woke up in real life, I was actually saying the prayer that I was saying in the dream, and I kept repeating that I was divinely protected. So this dream scared the shit out of me. As soon as I opened my eyes, I looked at the time, and the time was 4:44. I also woke up with the name Anubis in my mind. So to all my witches out there, I don't know what this dream was. It did scare me, but when I woke up, the time was 4:44, and because Anubis was in my mind, which is an Egyptian god, I kind of started wondering like what this dream could have meant. Oh, and I drew what the entity that I saw in my dream looked like. Okay, this is not the best drawing, but this is what it looked like. This is a picture of the Egyptian deity Anubis, and when I searched it up, it said that Anubis could show up for people who are going through deep periods of transformation or to help guide you through like shadow work and stuff like that. There was a whole lot more, but I found that particularly crazy because I'm actually going through a really like intense time of shadow work. I even booked a shadow work reading with my friend Talia. She's really good, by the way. I'll add her in the comments if you want. Go book a reading with her. But I just thought that that was like a really weird coincidence because I've been doing all of this shadow work. Anyway, I'm obviously suspicious though because I don't feel like a deity would scare me that bad. But then again, you never know because Anubis is the god of the underworld and darkness and other things like that. I even read that when Anubis shows up, you might have really vivid dreams of being guided through a dark place. So that's kind of really spot on. But again, I'm not sure. But yeah, to my fellow witches, to my fellow spiritual people, do you guys have any idea what that could have been? Do you think it was some kind of entity messing with me? Or do you think that Anubis could really be reaching out?
What would you do if the girl renting your extra rooms stopped acting human almost immediately? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about someone who says that they got a new roommate and then started hearing something through her door at night. I rented out the extra room in my apartment a couple years ago because I needed help with rent. The girl who moved in seemed normal enough at first. She was quiet, polite, young, barely had any stuff. And she said she worked weird hours and mostly kept to herself, which honestly sounded ideal to me. The first thing I noticed was that she never ate. Not once. No groceries or takeout containers, no dishes in the sink, nothing ever missing from the fridge. Every time I offered her food, she'd just smile a little and say she already ate. At first, I figured she was eating out or at work. And then the nights started. Her room was at the end of the hallway, and after maybe 4 or 5 days of her living there, I started hearing whispering through her door after midnight. Not talking on the phone or a normal conversation. Fast whispering, really fast, low and creepy and nonstop, like she was trying to keep up with something speaking back to her. And the worst part was that sometimes it didn't sound like one voice. It sounded like one voice answering another, but both of them were coming from inside her room. One night I stopped outside her door just to listen, and the whispering stopped immediately. And then from inside, in this weird, amused voice, she said, "Are you spying on me? I don't like that." I swear to you, I had not made a sound, and after that I started getting scared in my own hallway. I'd hear her moving around at night when she should have been sleeping. Bare footsteps, and her door opening and closing, and then that whispering again. And every morning she looked perfectly normal. Same quiet girl, and the same blank little answers, like none of it was happening. And then one night I got up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and saw her standing in the hallway, completely still and barefoot, facing my bedroom, and her mouth was hanging open. Not wide or screaming, just open enough that something about it looked deeply wrong in the dark. I froze, and then I said her name. She didn't move for a second, and then she said without closing her mouth, "I thought you were still asleep." I locked my bedroom door after that. The next day I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe she sleepwalked, maybe she had some mental health thing going on, or maybe I should have just kept asking her to move out instead of getting myself worked up. And that night I passed her room and noticed the door was cracked open, so I looked in. She was kneeling beside her bed facing the wall, not praying or doing anything I could understand. Just kneeling there perfectly still in the dark with her head slightly bowed toward the wall like she was waiting for it to answer her. I backed away before she could turn around, and the next morning, while she was gone, I went into her room, and there was almost nothing in it. It was literally just a duffel bag, a few clothes, no real toiletries or food, no charger plugged in, and the bed barely looked slept in at all. And on the floor beside the mattress were pages and pages covered in my name over and over in different handwriting. And that night I didn't sleep. I just sat in bed with the lamp on staring at my door. And then sometime after 3 I heard the whispering again. Only this time it wasn't coming from her room. It was coming from inside mine. I looked up and she was standing in my doorway listening. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
A girl named Jade sent me an email, and she shared her real life stalker story about a guy that she went on one date with who ended up knowing everything about her. And she says basically you never think that something like this could happen to you until it does, but it started when she was 17. She had never had a relationship, but she was interested in dating, and so some of her older friends decided to set her up with a casual acquaintance they knew. His name was Preston, and they met in a group setting with some of their mutual friends, but she said that he was sort of nerdy and socially awkward, He didn't really offer much in terms of his own interests or anything to make her interested in him. So it sort of fizzled out. She didn't even add him on social media. But about a year later, she joined a dating app trying to expand her options. And she came across a profile, and the guy in the profile seemed very cute. He looked a little familiar, but she didn't put two and two together. She didn't realize that it was the same guy that she had met a year before because she hadn't thought about him since. They ended up matching, they ended up talking, and he asked her on a date to a local restaurant. And she was fine with this because she didn't want him to know where she lived. This was her first experience with online dating, and so she goes to meet him at the restaurant. And as she meets him at the restaurant, she realizes, oh, this is the same person that I met a year prior. He says, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that you were the same person I met a year ago either. And they sit down and they start having dinner. But over dinner, she realized that the vibes were still off. He didn't really offer anything about himself. He didn't really ask her about her. And she was the one that was like sort of forcing this conversation that she didn't even really want to be having. So at the end of the date, he asked, oh, can I drive you home? But she was like, no, it's okay. I'll just get you an Uber. She knew she was not interested. But then right before she's about to leave, he's like, oh, have you ever thought about getting another dog since Smokey passed? And that stopped her in her tracks because Smokey was her childhood dog that passed away when she was 13. She says, I knew for a fact I had never mentioned this dog to this man, but somehow he knew him by name. She thought this was an extremely bizarre thing for him to ask, especially on a first date with him not even knowing her, but she assumed that he must have just looked at her social media, maybe her past post or something, and gotten the information that way. So she brushed it off. She ended up leaving alone, and he continued messaging her through the dating app, though she thought that if she just slowly sort of pulled away, he would lose interest, but he didn't. It was like when he sensed that she was pulling away or not engaging in conversation, he would bring up an obscure show that she was watching or a book that she was reading. He brought up her favorite band and asked if she would be willing to go and see this band with him. And she thought that all of this was very strange, but that it must be related to him just looking at her social media. So she just decided to fully ghost him. And remember, he did not have her as a friend on any social media platform. So if he was getting this information from her social media channels, he must have just been looking at it and going from there. He continued texting her through the dating app for about a month before she removed him from her matches entirely. But then he switched to the photo sharing platform. He began sending her private message request after message request and commenting on all of her photos. And she thought at first that it was harmless, but when it didn't let up after another month, she blocked him there as well. Then she noticed that he started making new profiles so that he could continue commenting on her photos and sending her message requests. She blocked those profiles as soon as they popped up, but it never let up. So eventually she made her entire profile private. You would think it ends there, but it doesn't, because then he started making profiles posing as people that she actually knew in real life, and he tried to catfish her that way. He moved to the other platform in which you make a profile and accept friends and post status updates, and began posing as people that she went to school with or former coworkers. The conversation would start like, hey, it's me, Catherine, I got hacked and this is my new profile. And so she would go back and forth with this friend that she thought that she was talking to until she would bring up something from the conversation in real life, and that friend was like, what are you talking about? She would show them the profile and they would be like, that's not me, someone is impersonating me. And this happened a number of times with several different people. And at the time, she didn't really know who was behind it, but it got to a point where it happened so frequently that she stopped accepting new friend requests and message requests because she was too afraid that it was a hacker. But she noticed around this time that the requests from Preston had stopped coming in, and so she thought that he had moved on. About a year passed, and she ended up getting a job working in the kitchen at a restaurant. And her birthday was coming up, and she wanted to take off, so she put in a time off request so that she could go out to dinner with family and then go out with friends after. And as she was sitting at dinner with her family, she got a message request on the photo sharing app, and she opened it up, and it was another profile that Preston had made, and he asked how her pasta dish was. She blocked the request immediately, but then about a minute or two later, another request came in from a profile without a photo, and it said, if you tell the waitress it's your birthday, she'll give you a free dessert. This, of course, scared her. She hadn't even posted where she was at or that it was her birthday, and so she went to the bathroom to calm herself down. And when she came out of the bathroom, she saw Preston leaned up against the men's bathroom across the hall. When she saw him, she beelined it back in the women's restroom and called her sister, who was sitting at the table, to come into the bathroom so she could walk her back to the table with her family. When her sister came in, she told her about everything that had been happening, and her sister was like, well, show me who it is. I'll confront him. But when they walked back out of the bathroom, he was gone, and she spent the rest of the dinner on edge. Still though, she tried to rationalize this in her head and thought maybe he just happened to be eating at the same restaurant when she was there, which is how he knew that she had ordered pasta and that it was her birthday. And she didn't want it to ruin her night. So after dinner, she still decided she was going to go out with her friends. And her friends were having this big bonfire in a more remote part of their town. It was in a secluded woodsy area on private property that was owned by one of her friends' parents. As the night went on and she spent a few hours with her friends talking and laughing and having a good time, she sort of forgot what happened at the restaurant. But then her stomach dropped because she had another message request. And when she opened it up, it was another new profile with no profile photo. And it was asking her why she was sitting so close to one of her male friends. That message creeped her out more than any other message she received, because it either meant that he was somewhere around where he could see what she was doing, or he was watching her friends' posts about what she was doing. She started telling her friends all about Preston and how many times he had tried to message her through the years, and started putting two and two together about him making the fake profiles posing as them. They offered to take her to the police station, but she was hesitant to get law enforcement involved because she was worried that they would tell her that she was being overdramatic, because he hadn't threatened her, and it could be explained by him simply watching the social media channels of the people that she was around. But about a week later, things escalated again when she was babysitting her 3-year-old nephew and there was a knock at the door. She went to the door and opened it, and there stood Preston holding a Subway sandwich and a bottle of Jack Daniels. When she opened the door, he simply said, "We can have a little date after you put the baby to bed," and she slammed the door in his face and called the police. By the time they got there, he was gone, but she showed them the messages and they told her to keep her distance. And maybe calling the police worked, because the messages actually stopped for a while. Maybe he was in the area and had seen the police arrive, but he didn't message her again for about a year. She eventually ended up moving out of her mom's house, and she felt safer in her new space because she knew it meant he had absolutely no idea where she lived, and she was very careful not to post anything on any of her profiles, even though they were private, so that he couldn't figure out where she was in case he was still watching. Shortly after that, her mom also moved out of that house, which gave Jade a sense of peace because she knew that it meant he couldn't stalk her family either. Sadly, shortly after her mom moved out of that house, she passed away, and Jade and her sisters planned a memorial service at a church that their mother attended. Toward the end of the celebration of life, though, Jade and her sisters were saying their goodbyes and thanking everyone from coming when someone caught her eye from across the room, and she looked toward the back of the church, and she caught a glimpse of Preston getting up from a chair and walking out the back door of the church. She immediately checked her phone. She noticed that he had not sent her a message request or indicated in any way, shape, or form that he was coming. He had simply shown up, and she wouldn't have even known it had she not seen him get up and exit the church. Now, Jade says she has not heard from him since that day, but the scariest thing is she's not sure if he actually stopped watching her and finally left her alone, or if he just stopped letting her know that he's there. She sent this sort of as a warning. Be careful what you post on social media. Be careful who you let in to know the intimate details of your life. And if you feel like something is off from the get-go, let somebody know. I'm not sure if she'll be responding to comments, but she will be seeing them, so let her know if you have any thoughts. And if you have an experience of your own, something that still leaves you unsettled, or something that you want to warn people about, let us know. We would love to hear it.
Maybe wait or do more research before you get Moldavite. I am back with another spooky story. So we're gonna call the person who submitted the story Belle. Belle said about a couple of years ago, she kept seeing videos on TikTok about Moldavite. Everyone was saying it was a powerful crystal and it would transform your life. Some people even joked that it would ruin your life before making it better. Belle at the time felt like she was at a point in her life where things weren't bad, things were relatively good, but they could always be better. Plus, she's like, you know what, it's probably another trend anyway. She's thinking it's probably just another trend, but it doesn't hurt to try. So she ordered a small Moldavite ring from an online crystal shop. When you order these things online, there's a big chance that it's not authentic. But she said the day it arrived, she remembers putting it on immediately. And within seconds, her fingers started tingling. She convinced herself maybe it was just excitement, or shit, maybe the crystal's working. She said that same night, she had the most vivid nightmare of her life. She had the worst sleep paralysis and she felt like she was stuck there for a while. And mind you, she can't move. There was someone standing at the foot of her bed just staring at her. When she finally woke up, the finger that the ring was on, her finger looked like it had swelled up. Her finger wasn't swelled up to the point where it hurt. So she basically just kind of moved on, right? Went about her day. Then everything really started happening. 3 days later, Belle got laid off from her job. About a week after that, she went through her nigga phone and found out that he had been cheating on her for about a year now with the same bitch he was telling her not to worry about. She says, by the way, it's always a coworker. Go through your man phone. Hey, I'm just reading. She got into it with her man so bad that the 4-year relationship crumbled right then and there. Just when she thought things could not get any worse, her landlord suddenly decided not to renew her lease because he wanted to renovate the building. So within a month or so, Belle lost her relationship, her apartment, and her income. She's like, okay, well, maybe the Moldavite is just taking away things that's not meant to serve me. But then her dog got sick. He's never had health problems before. He's relatively a young dog, but overnight he stopped eating and had to stay at the emergency vet for days. And mind you, she just lost her job. She's staying with her parents again, and she's draining whatever little savings she has trying to keep her dog alive. She's like, she understands that Moldavite clears out what no longer belongs in your life. But goddamn, the dog? Why would her dog have to suffer? That's when she decided, you know what? She's just gonna get rid of the ring. But she says she also spent a lot of money on the ring. So why would she just throw it away? So Belle decided that the best course of action would be to gift the ring. So she wrapped it up real nice and decided to gift it to her least favorite cousin. She says, mind you, the cousin doesn't know what Moldavite is, but it's her problem now. And she says she doesn't know if it's related or not. The last time she saw that cousin, she could have sworn she saw her looking out on the side of the road. No, she didn't stop to make sure. But she says, yeah, so like maybe don't buy Moldavite because it ruined her life. Thank you so much for submitting this spooky story. If you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to submit it to me right here on TikTok or DM me on Instagram. Hit that follow button for more spooky content. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you say anything about my face, I just woke up, bitch. Be gratitude that y'all getting a spooky story today. I'm your favorite Haitian homegirl.
The person that sent me this story called it Ouija boards and revivals. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi there. Hi! I recently found your page and have really been enjoying your content. I wanted to share something that happened to me when I was younger. Some of it I remember clearly, while other parts were told to me by family because I have little to no memory of them. When I was younger, my sister and I were home alone. She's 4 years younger than me, and I was in the kitchen making chicken for us. We were laughing and having a good time when we suddenly heard my mother's radio turn on in her bedroom by itself. This was the early 2000s. There were no smart devices or anything like that. Thinking maybe my dad had fixed it one too many times. I like we do fixed in quotes. I get it. Thinking my dad may have fixed it one too many times, I walked in and turned it off. I went back to the kitchen, and several minutes later, it turned on again. This time, the volume slowly crept up until it reached maximum. Again, I assumed it was faulty wiring. I walked into the room, turned it off, and unplugged it from the wall. It had no batteries and no backup power source. Nothing else was plugged into it. 4 or 5 minutes later, the radio blasted at full volume. My sister and I froze. We both knew I had unplugged it. I immediately turned off the stove and we ran out of the trailer. We lived in a used single-wide mobile home after a house fire had destroyed our previous home. I'm so sorry. We ran all the way down to the swing set. We sat there nervous, laughing from the adrenaline, trying to convince ourselves that we were overreacting. And then something happens that I still can't explain. We watched gravel rocks lift off the ground and fly towards us. I was terrified. I was so scared I triggered an asthma attack. Oh my God, yeah, obviously. We sat outside for nearly 30 minutes waiting for our parents to come home because there was no way we were going back inside alone. Hold on, wait a second though. How long were the rocks flying at you? Did they continue to fly at you? Was it just like a couple of rocks that flew at you and it stopped? Because you're still outside. Did you run away more from the swing set where the rocks were being thrown at you? This is where my memory starts to become fragmented. I remember an overwhelming urge to hurt my sister. I could hear a voice telling me to pick up a boulder and smash her head in. The thought horrified me, but it didn't feel like it was coming from me. My sister later told me that when she turned around to talk to me, I was sitting cross-legged on the hood of my dad's broken down truck, staring at nothing. She said I was writing on my leg with my left hand, even though I'm right-handed. What were you writing with? She got closer and noticed that I was writing a name upside down, a name that she had never seen before. And then, without warning, she said I chased her down the road. She always described it the same way. She said I looked calm, not angry, not out of breath, just calm. I had severe asthma and I weighed about 200 pounds at the time. According to her, I ran like I didn't need to breathe. My parents finally came home and my dad caught me in the middle of chasing her. Through tears, my sister explained what had happened. Without hesitation, my dad told my mother, take the kids, find a church, go now. Thank God. Someone who's believing their kids and is taking it motherfucking seriously. Thank you. He stayed behind to bless and cleanse the house. My mother drove around town crying until she happened upon a revival service. She told me that before she could even go through the church doors, the pastor stopped and looked at her and said, who's been playing with the Ouija board? I had one. I had even taken it to school before, though I hadn't used it in some time, but I had talked to John. John was supposedly the boy who had lived in that same mobile home years earlier and had died before we moved in. My mother said the music stopped. People gathered around me and began praying, laying hands on me. I remember none of this. The next thing I remember is waking up on the floor surrounded by people. I was confused and drenched in sweat. From that day forward, I never touched a Ouija board again. To this day, I can't explain what happened. Maybe there was a logical explanation for parts of it. Maybe there aren't. But every person involved has told the same story for years, and the things I do remember still send chills down my spine. The name I wrote was the name of a demon, according to my mother's research afterwards. Oh my God, I wonder which one it was. The end, by the way. So do we think that John was not John after all? John was not some person that died in the trailer. John was actually the demon named whatever the name was that she was writing upside down on her leg while clearly possessed. I'm sorry, no, I look excited about this because the story was good. It's not that I'm excited that you got possessed. That's fucking terrifying and scary. And I'm glad that you are okay. I love that you walked into the church and like immediately they were like, who's been playing with the Ouija board? Come over here. Music stops. We're going to fix you. Thank God you didn't get to hurt your sister. Oh my God. This was a scary story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Last winter, I decided to go solo hiking in the White Mountains. It started off as one of those like perfect winter hikes. It was the perfect weather. It was just barely like kind of coming out of winter. The snow was still on the ground. Beautiful day outside. I only passed 2 other people on the way up, and then it was just me, myself, and I. Eventually, I reached this like straightaway of untouched snow, except one thing about it was really weird. There were footprints there, but only footprints that I could see with my eyes. So I'm somebody who, when I'm hiking, I pretty much always have my phone out with me because I love to take pictures of the scenery around me. So like I already had my phone with the camera on, ready to rock and roll. But what I was seeing with my own eyes was not translating on the camera. It was the weirdest thing ever, and it honestly freaked me the fuck out. Because on my phone screen, the snow in front of me was literally smooth and untouched, like it had just freshly snowed that day. But every time I looked at it with my own eyes, there was visible footprints. At one point I thought I was fucking dreaming because like, honestly, there was no other explanation in my mind. The only other explanation in my mind was that maybe my phone lens is dirty, so I fucking blew on it, rubbed it on my shirt, rubbed it on my pants, like everything I could to clean it off, and still nothing showed up on the camera. And that deeply unsettling feeling turned straight to fear after that, because dude, wouldn't you be horrified if that happened to you? Well, I just decided to fuck it and keep walking. And as I'm walking, I start to notice this thing standing up on the ridge. By up on the ridge, I mean like further up the trail. So like I was on this part of the trail that was kind of going up, like pretty steep, and at the top of that, before I could see it going down, I saw something standing up there. It was a person standing completely still up in the snow. And like I said, I have my phone on me, so I'm like trying to zoom in to see it closer. When I fucking lift my phone up to zoom in, there is nothing there. So I look up from my phone, the thing is still there. I look back down at my phone, the thing is not there. At that point, my stomach dropped to my fucking toes because something was standing there. I knew it, but my phone wasn't, you know, it was not helping the situation. I didn't know what else to do. Thinking back now, I should have just ran away. But instead of doing that, I called out to see if this person maybe needed some help or something. Maybe they were like lost, or maybe they were cold, maybe they needed some water. I don't know. I just wanted to be a helpful hiker. The person didn't react to me at all, which I thought was really weird. But I did notice that the shoulders were moving. But it wasn't like the movement of breathing. It was more of like a pulsing movement. Like something pulsing under the skin. And then the thing turned around, dude, and it wasn't its body, it was just its head, and it didn't like crack its neck towards me or anything. It just slowly turned its head towards me. It was turning in this weird way as if the head was just some sort of decoration, you know what I mean? But the thing that made me run away, seriously, was when I lifted up my phone to like double check and see if this thing was there. Again, there was no footprints, no person standing there. And then when I put my phone back down, the thing was closer to me. That's when I fucking booked it. I was nope. I'm not gonna be another statistic. This is not gonna happen. I don't really remember much from the run back to the car, but once I got back to my car, I was safely inside the car. I whipped out my phone again, just just to like, I don't know what I was thinking about, because I just thought the whole thing was weird with my phone. So I whip out the phone and I'm like trying to look around outside of the windows with the phone. And it literally looks like everything in the forest is completely untouched. There's no footprints, not even my own. There's nothing out of place. Like, it looked like not even a single animal had hopped through the forest floor. Only through my phone screen. I could see everything with my own eyes. Bitch, there's nothing wrong with my phone. I have an iPhone 15 Pro Max or whatever the fuck you want to call it. My husband didn't believe me at all when I got home to tell him. He thought that I was just being crazy, or like I was seeing things, or it was just like the snow and the light mixture playing tricks on me or something like that. But I know what I saw, and I know the circumstances of that event. I have not gone solo hiking in the White Mountains since then. Even though I deeply want to, I probably will again this year. Maybe I'll vlog that. But fingers crossed that everything that happens will be explainable this time.
I went camping in an uncharted forest, and I should have lit a candle. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. They say when you start looking into monsters, monsters start looking back. I used to think that was the kind of thing writers used to say to sound interesting at parties. I don't go to parties anymore. My name is Mark. I don't know who this is going to reach, but I need to tell someone. It was supposed to be a writing trip, but when my new fishing stuff came early, I thought I'd make the most of it. I found a quiet spot right out of the way of everything. I was meant to have 2 days of peace, 2 days all to myself, but I wasn't myself. I cast at 6:47. By 6:49, I knew something wasn't right with this place. The lure hit the water, and the lake didn't ripple. It just swallowed it, sucked it under like tar. I just stood there and watched the line go slack. I should have packed up then, I know that now, but I'd driven 4 hours to test this gear, and I had a deadline, a horror novel due in 3 weeks, 40,000 words of nothing. I thought the dark waters of Hollowthorn Lake would inspire me. The dark had other plans. I waited longer than I should have to catch something. Then, finally, a tug. I started reeling in. It came back heavy and slow, catching every few turns. Then giving way with this soft pop. I could feel it in my hands. I was getting excited. The lure came back up with a splash, just rose out of the water, dripping black. Something was on it. I thought it was a fish at first. Then it caught the dusk light, and I saw it was a shoe. Small, a kid's trainer, pink under the mud, little silver star near the heel, laces still tied in a bow. That bow is what got me, not the mud or the smell. Someone had tied the shoe before it went in. I crouched down and told myself to stop being dramatic. Kids lose their things. Families probably camp out here. It could have come from anywhere, except the lake was completely still. Nothing drifted in that water. I reached for it and stopped. There was something inside. My brain said foot before my eyes caught up, and I nearly dropped the rod, but it wasn't. Just a root that had grown up through the opening, pale and swollen, with 5 little nubs at the end where a kid's toes would have been. I actually laughed. Then it twitched, small, just a flex, like something testing the air. I went over backwards, caught my heel, and nearly fell in. The shoe swung off the hook and landed in front of me. I should have packed up then. Anyone with sense would have. But I stood there with my 300-pound fancy rod in one hand and my pride in the other, trying to talk myself out of being afraid of a muddy kid's trainer. Because that's what men do, isn't it? We see something that makes every part of our body scream, leave, and we stand there calling it rubbish because rubbish is easier to explain. So I kicked the shoe towards the waterline with my boot. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lake took it back. There were no waves, no currents. The shoe simply slid across the mud, slowly, deliberately, until it touched the black surface. Then it sank straight down, like something underneath had opened its hand. I sat at the edge for a while trying to rationalize what I saw. Do roots move? Do lakes have crabs? Was I drunk from last night? By the time I looked up from the water, it was dark. I set up my tent by my headlamp. No fire because the wood was damp, and I don't like being told what to do. There was a sign on the trail entrance in bright red letters, warning campers to light a campfire before dark. I thought I knew better. The forest is eerie in the dark. The moonlight reflecting off the still water hit the trees at all the wrong angles, casting long, ominous shadows everywhere I looked. I almost didn't go for the pee I'd been holding since I sat down to fish. I braved it, quickly. I didn't go far, just far enough that the tent was just behind me and the trees gave me some privacy. That was the idea anyway. The problem with forests is they don't understand privacy. They watch you from every angle. I kept my headlamp pointed down, mostly because I didn't want to see anything staring back from behind the trunks. The beam caught wet leaves, exposed roots, and patches of mud that looked darker than the rest. I was halfway through when something rustled to my left. I stopped, listened. Nothing. Then the branch snapped behind me, a proper snap too. Not a twig under a rabbit, not the soft crackle of something small moving through the dry leaves. This was weight. I turned so fast I nearly peed on my boot. The headlamp beam swung through the trees, catching bark, moss, black gaps, and nothing else. "Hello?" I said. And the rustling came again, this time from the right. I spun towards it, heart kicking, but there was nothing there either, just the lake behind the trees, flat and black, reflecting the moon like a dead eye. For a second I couldn't work out where the sound came from. Left, right, behind me, everywhere except where I was looking. I finished quickly, zipped up with shaky hands, and told myself it was foxes or deer or whatever else people say when they have no choice but to stay out there alone. Something moved directly in front of me. Just the dark between the trees shifting slightly, like it had taken a step back. I didn't wait to understand it. I turned and hurried back to the tent, trying very hard not to run, trying even harder not to look over my shoulder. I unzipped it, climbed in, zipped it again, trying to get my heart rate to slow. It's strange how paper-thin walls make you feel invincible. I opened the laptop, letting the familiar glow of the screen settle my breathing, and started to write. For maybe 10 minutes, I almost convinced myself I was fine. Then I made the mistake of focusing on my own reflection in the black border of the display, my face, the canvas behind me, the sleeping bag to my left, the shape to my right. I froze. It didn't move. A million thoughts raced through my mind. I pitched the tent, I added my gear, I went for a pee and got straight in. It didn't come in after me. It had been there the whole time. That's when the growling started, a frequency that found the hollow spaces in my body and sat in them, low and deliberate, like a question I didn't have the biology to answer. I grabbed my keys and bolted, frantically unzipping the tent and crashing through the mosquito netting. I didn't grab the laptop, didn't grab the rod, just ran for the car with the headlamp bouncing and the dark everywhere around me, pressing in like a hand over my mouth. I scrambled through the trees, branches snapping and cracking behind me. I could almost feel its warm, putrid breath on my neck. As my feet hit the gravel of the car park, the feeling eased. The car didn't start the first time, the second time. The third time it caught. I don't like to do this, I'm really sorry, but I'm gonna have to do a part 2. I will upload it at the exact same time I upload this one, so you can go straight to it.
Want to get creeped out? I've been being terrorized by a haunted doll. I collect haunted dolls, and I'll get more into that later, but I'm going to show you the doll, so if you don't want to see it, close your eyes for a few seconds. My wife brought me home this doll because she thought that I would like it. By the way, this doll is not supposed to be haunted. My wife just got it for me because she thought I would like it. Here's a better view. Shortly after she came home to me, I had sleep paralysis with her in it. It wasn't inherently scary, but it was weird. I've been experiencing sleep paralysis for now like 18 years, so it's been a long time. However, I haven't been experiencing sleep paralysis that often anymore. So I just thought it was kind of odd that I had sleep paralysis right away when she comes into the house. Shortly after, I had another sleep paralysis episode, and I don't really remember much of what happened in it, but I did wake up with a scratched eye, and I will show you a picture of that. There is a much more vulnerable picture that I took, which I shared on our Discord, where I look a lot more upset because I had just woken up and seen this scratch on my eye. And in this photo, clearly, I'm not upset, but it was just weird. But I could have done that to myself. So was that the doll? I don't know. I'm just saying this is another strange thing that has happened since the doll has come into the house. I also showed a picture of her, the doll, in our Discord, and there are some psychics in our Discord. They feel like this doll is off. They feel like something is bad news bears with this doll. One of our friends on our Discord said she was seeing like red X's on the doll's eyes. This all happens, and then I go on a week-long trip, a trip from hell, but I won't get into that. And the day I get home, I have sleep paralysis again. It's important to note that literally we just returned home from this trip, and my fingers were like swelling for some reason, so I took off my wedding rings. Before I had the sleep paralysis, I had this really weird dream where I was in this haunted house. Things weren't good. Things didn't feel good. And there was a baby crying, and this person that I know was like, can you go help the baby? So I went into this bedroom, and the baby was there. And this is really weird, but the baby was like falling in between the bed and the wall, like in the crack. It was okay, but it was like crying and like, I don't know, it was weird. And in the bed, lying in the bed, was the same person who told me to go get the baby. Immediately realizing there's two people here who look the exact same. Mimic, doppelganger type situation. But it's a dream, okay? But for some reason, I go to get the baby baby. I pick up the baby and I go to turn around and leave that bedroom because I'm like, I don't know which one of these people that look the same is the good one and the mimic or the doppelganger. And as soon as I turn around, standing in the doorway is the one who told me to go get the baby. And I'm like, this doesn't feel good. Suddenly, I wake up in my bed having sleep paralysis. And there is an entity in my room. It does not feel good. Okay. And for some reason, my instinct is that it's like whatever is attached to the doll. I could also hear this male's voice, I believe, saying, why would you take off your wedding rings? Those are your protection. And then it said, those are your faith, and something about God and religion. And I am not a religious person. I'm more of a spiritual person. So this was really weird for me. The thing is, I've had, like I said, sleep paralysis in the past, and that sleep paralysis has been terrifying. Okay. Literally terrifying. This one wasn't as scary, but for some reason, I felt terrified, horrified, and I start praying to God during the sleep paralysis. Trying to anyways, because I can't speak. My wife is laying beside me, so I start trying to get her attention. I start trying to scream for her, but I can't. However, I'm actually able to get out the words, help me, twice, and she gets me out of my sleep paralysis. I have never had this happen before. I have had people wake me up from sleep paralysis because I am like breathing really scary and it's freaking them out. I have never been next to someone and been able to speak to them and say, help me, and have them get me out of my sleep paralysis. That was a first. I am telling people in the Discord about the sleep paralysis after I had it. I'm terrified, feeling super freaked out. And this doll is sitting on a dresser when one of our friends in Discord messages and says something about surrounding her with salt. The second I get that message, she falls off of the dresser, and I got a picture of my dog running over to her and then of her lying on the floor. I didn't get it on video. Obviously, I didn't know it was going to happen. So that was weird. Another thing that was weird is the light in that room was swinging the other day, and I've never seen this happen before unless we hit it, which we have to raise our arms up to do. It's not like you can accidentally hit it. And it's also not like it swings from movement in the house. It literally has never happened. And obviously anyone who's watching this video could be like, you did this, you're making this up. And that's fine. I question things I see on the internet all the time. It's healthy too. I am a huge skeptic. I'm not superstitious. I'm just a little stitious. Okay. So I don't know, but something weird is afoot. Okay. I am going to post a video about another haunted doll that was recently sent to me by a woman, but also if you want all of this information in one little video, okay, and also how I have haunted dolls, are they actually haunted dolls, etc. The long version of this video, okay?
Have you ever heard someone calling your name when there wasn't anyone around? Now, I believe more people have paranormal encounters than they'd like to admit, but we don't like to acknowledge it. Now, there was this girl named Kelly. Kelly lived in Salem, Massachusetts, in this very old colonial home. Now, she said there was this basement that looked more like a cellar, and she did not like to go down there. It always creeped her out. But her washer and dryer were down there. Now, at this period of time, she was living with her mother. And she said sometimes when her mom would be gone, and she'd have to go downstairs and do laundry, she would get the feeling like she was being watched. Well, she said one day she was home alone, and she took a basket of clothes down to the basement. She said she had her 2 dogs with her, who were always by her side, and they never left her. But this particular day, as she's putting her clothes in the washer, she said the dogs caught wind of something, and they took off running up the basement stairs like they were scared of something. And she said as she sat there, she began to get the feeling like someone was watching her. So she made her way to the stairs and she started to walk up. She gets about to the halfway point when she hears her mom say, "Kelly, Kelly, Kelly." But she knew her mom wasn't home. So she made her way to the top of the stairs and she closed the basement door. And she told herself, I am not going down in that basement anymore. So she started to do her laundry at her friend's house. And many months passed and she sort of forgot about this encounter down the basement. But she said one weekend her mom had went on a work trip and she was home alone. Well, she was up in her bedroom asleep. She said she happened to wake up to the sound of her mom calling her. Kelly, 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 Kelly. So she said she got up out of bed, but she was still, half asleep to realize that her mom wasn't home. So as she gets up out of the bed and she goes into the hallway, she realizes it's coming from downstairs. So she walks to the stairs, she goes to the first floor, and she said that's when she hears the sound behind her. Kelly! So she turns around, she looks, and she can see the basement door is wide open. The sound of her mom's voice is coming from downstairs in the basement. And that's when it occurs to her, wait a second, my mom is on a work trip. And as she looks at the basement door, which is wide open, she said she sees a pair of eyes looking at her. So she runs out of the house and she starts getting in her car. And she could see the windows to the basement. The light was going off and on continuously, like there was someone down there. She said she never returned to that house again. And her mom still lives there to this day, but she claims nothing happens. Why aren't we talking anymore about what happened in Las Vegas? Now, if you recall 3 years ago, on April 30th, 2023, there was this large meteorite that was seen over Las Vegas. It was reported by several people, including the Las Vegas Police Department. Exactly 30 minutes later, there was a call to the Las Vegas Police Department from this terrified family who claimed that something crashed in their yard, and there were these two 10-foot tall humanoid creatures moving around their backyard. And two of the boys who actually witnessed this, they came forward and they said these things had some sort of control over them, that they could not move when they seen these things until they started to pray. And then shortly after that, it was called a hoax. It was kind of brushed under the rug, and we've not talked about it more. But there have been people who actually triangulated where this meteorite was seen. And they all agreed it would have crashed in the exact neighborhood where this family lived. Not only that, not too long before that, you had the same incident in Miami, at the Miami Mall, where people seen this exact 10-foot tall like creatures. And when you think about it, a lot of these things that people encounter in the woods, they're all described the same exact way. Tall, lanky, skinny, right? With these big black eyes and these elongated mouths. There are many names for them, right? Walkers, wendigos, crawlers, Slender Man. And all of these people have had reports with these same type of creatures. And we see this repetitive theme throughout the last 10 or 15 years. So what is it that people are seeing? What happened in Las Vegas? There's a spot in eastern Texas, western Arkansas, and eastern Oklahoma, specifically in the Wichita Mountains, that I took to calling Bigfoot Valley. Now, this place is a hotspot for Bigfoot activity. In fact, I think people have more Bigfoot encounters there than in the Pacific Northwest or the Sierra Nevadas. But a lot of Bigfoot activity happens in and around this area. Now, there was a story I heard out of western Arkansas, right on the Texas border. There was this man and his wife, and they had lived at this home for like 15 years. He said one of the things he noticed over the many years was he would always find these animal carcasses, and it looked like something had tore them apart. He thought maybe it was coyotes or bears, but he never could figure out what was doing this. Well, one night him and his wife, they went out on this date. And they got home, it was really late. He said as they pulled into the driveway, the first thing he notices, the front door was wide open. So he tells his wife, stay in the car. If I don't come back out, you drive off and get help. So he gets out of his car and he walks up to the front door. And the first thing he notices was this horrible putrid stench. And it almost made him throw up. It was so bad. So as he walks into the house, he begins to hear noise. It was coming from the basement door. So the basement door was wide open. There was a sound down in the basement. So he goes and he grabs his firearm. And he approaches the basement door. He flips the light on and it goes quiet. Now, he said the basement was very dimly lit. And there were these wooden stairs with the space in between each step. So he walks down to the third or fourth step. And he said that's when he felt something grab his leg. It was a hairy human hand, but it was bigger than a human's hand. And it latched on to his ankle. So he began yelling and trying to fight this thing and get free from it. His wife hears this commotion. She comes running in the house. And by the time she gets to where he's at in the basement, whatever this was, it lets go. So he runs upstairs, he grabs his wife, and he says, we're getting out of here. He takes her to a family member's house. And he gets two of his buddies. And they go back. Now, when they arrive, they all three notice that putrid stench from inside the house. They go down into the basement with their firearms drawn. But when they get down there, there's absolutely nothing there. But the basement was completely destroyed. So the craziest thing was that the water heater had been ripped from galvanized pipe and thrown across the room. And whatever this was, it had to be something very big and powerful. So when him and his buddies, they go back upstairs, they begin to hear these loud whooping sounds coming from in the woods near the house. And so he and his buddies, they get back in the vehicle and they leave. And he said after that, he lived there for many years, but he never had an experience quite like that. But he definitely felt like something was living in the woods there in western Arkansas.
So I have tried to record this video 3 times in Tobago, and all my equipment just went dead. Mic going dead, laptop going dead. So we're gonna try this again. We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini Scary Story, Trini Folklore for you today. And we have a paranormal story about something that looked like a plastic bag on a tree. Let's get into it. So our follower said, there was a time when I used to live in San Juan on the hills in the bush. One night I was going to bed when suddenly I felt an urge to look outside. When I did, I saw something like a white plastic bag in the tree, and at my young age thinking, hey, that's an owl in the tree, I told my cousin. He then told me that it is not an animal. However, we both went outside to get a closer look at it. Examining the plastic bag, it was motionless. Too motionless to be a plastic bag considering how windy the hill is at night. So I told him, I bet I can get you to not hit that bag with a stone. And obviously as kids, he took up the offer, finding rivalry in who would be able to hit the plastic bag first. We started throwing rocks at the bag when suddenly the air felt thin. The environment got quiet and it started feeling really cool and darker than usual. In that instant, it is where my rock finally connected with the bag, and suddenly we heard something like running in the bushes, but when we looked in the direction, there was nothing coming towards us. As the smart little children we were, hearing footsteps in the dark on a hill, pitch darkness with something where something is running at a very high speed, we took off. We went inside. We never spoke about that plastic bag to this day. But before we finish the story, did you register for the Papa Boy vote? I am telling you, this is a once in a lifetime medal. It was designed by us in Trinidad and Tobago. It is being produced right now in Trinidad and Tobago by us, so it's totally 100% local, like Papa Boy. And it is one of a kind. You're going to get a player card collectible of Papa Boy. You're going to get a mini storybook of who Papa Boy is. So we are keeping the tradition of our folklore characters alive. So when somebody see a medal and they say, well, what is that? You're going to pull out your little player card. You're going to pull out your little storybook and be like, let's talk about it. It is Papa Boy or folklore characters. So WhatsApp us at 283-0003, or you can click on the link in the bio and you can register today for this beautiful medal. Okay. So before I conclude, I want to know if you all can figure out what that plastic bag was. I personally think it was some paranormal creature that was just perched on the tree looking at people very quietly, and they just, as in their little children's brain, mistaken it for a plastic bag. But you let me know, what do you think that paranormal creature was?
The most terrifying hiking trail in the United States is located in Tennessee, in the Appalachia, a place called the Norton Creek Trail. Now, the Norton Creek Trail is about an hour from Knoxville, Tennessee, and probably about 20 minutes from Gatlinburg. Now, this trail goes through the Smoky Mountain National Park, and this area has the highest concentration of old pioneer cemeteries and abandoned homesteads that you can actually visit. This area is known for ghostly apparitions, orbs, people disappearing. There is a famous story about a pioneer settler who went looking for his missing daughter on this trail and actually was found unalived. Now, the creepiest legend, though, in this area is that of Spearfinger. Now, Spearfinger is this old Cherokee legend that there is this witch who they described as being sometimes 40 feet tall, having skin like rocks, and this long, sharp finger that is shaped like a spear. And the creepy thing about Spearfinger is that she could shapeshift. She could be anyone, your auntie, your cousin, your best friend, and she could be walking right behind you. You turn around and she sticks her long spear finger into your back, rips out your liver, and eats it. Now, this story comes from this same general area. There was this woman who said when she was a young girl, her and her brothers and sisters, they lived in this small shack in the Appalachian Mountains. And she said, they were very poor. So this house was, not that big. They all shared a bedroom. And they said their father had to leave them alone for a couple days. So their auntie came to stay with them. So they said, one night they're hanging out with their auntie and they're joking, they're having a good time, when all of a sudden, they said the air just got stale and they could feel almost like a cold breeze blowing into the house. And they said the dogs started to freak out and bark and go crazy, like someone was outside. So the auntie got really, really nervous and really scared. She takes the kids and they all go up into this attic where the father had made kind of like a safe area for them to hide if anything were to ever happen. So they're all sitting up in the attic, and there's, this tiny little hole that they could see down into, the downstairs. And they said all of a sudden the door opened up, and they said in walked this little old lady. And they said she just kind of, was touching everything around their house. And she said all of a sudden this old woman started saying, "Come out, children, come out. I got something for you. Come down here. I want to tell you a story." And she started, acting like she was this concerning old woman who wanted to give the kids, stories and candy. And so the kids started to say to the auntie, like, "Can we go down there? Can we see her? Can we see her?" And she's, "Quiet, just be quiet." And the more they resisted, the more this woman was like, "Come down here, kids. Come down here. I got something for you. Like, I have some toys." And, they're like, "Oh my goodness, we don't have no toys. Like, we should go down there. We should go down there." And the auntie's like, no, fighting with them, saying like, "You have to stay up here in the attic." And so they said all of a sudden, the woman kind of disappeared out of sight. And as they're looking down this little hole, they said the next thing they knew, a finger popped up through the hole and started, moving around. And she said the auntie and the kids are all scared because they're seeing like this finger just coming up through the hole. And they said the finger started to grow and grow, and it became almost like this long, sharp spear. And they said it started to move around the attic, and they had to like avoid it because it was almost hitting them. And the auntie just started saying these prayers like over and over again. And they said all of a sudden it was like, boom, like they had woken up from a dream. This old woman was gone. The air seemed normal. And so the auntie brings them down from the attic. And she said the next day when her auntie went outside, all of their animals that they had out there were like mutilated, torn apart. And she said to this day, she is afraid to go out in the woods in this area.
Marjorie was just 5 years old when she was murdered. Brutal stuff too, like garden shears through the eyes. What a way to go. They say her brain leaked out onto the lawn, and that sometimes during summer, if you sit and listen real closely, you can hear her thoughts bleeding through the blooming flowers like a death echo or something. I would drop by her old place every summer and pick a nice murder bouquet and stuff the haunted flowers down the throat of Ken down the street. He was a paraplegic, you see, so he couldn't really do anything about it. Don't worry though, I'd make sure he wouldn't choke to death. Didn't want him to get off that easy. I missed Ken good after Marjorie died. Kept him locked in that garage for like a week and broke every bone in his body. Twice, for good measure. He was like rattling meat bag when we were done with him. You could shake him like a grotesque maracas. But they patched him up good, but he was never the same. Stuck in a wheelchair the rest of his life, drool dribbling down his scarred face and like disgusting mucousy streams. Unable to move, unable to talk. It suits him for what he did, I always figured. Cops didn't buy it though, of course. Still unsolved, cold case by now, I guess. Ice-covered paperwork just crystallizing somewhere in a freezing basement. We got in a lot of trouble before we did it again. I mean, they didn't have any evidence, but they slammed the hammer down on all of us regardless. 2 years. Anyways, the cops never believed that Ken did it, but let me ask you this. Who else could have done it? We all knew that Ken was stalking her, following her around like a little puppy. Okay, and he was creepy too, with beady little eyes staring into your soul, this wheezing, high-pitched voice. He's a psychopath. So I visited him yearly and stuffed another bunch of corpse flowers down his throat, watch him squirm as he almost chokes to death on her phantom fragments. Just before the merciful darkness swallows him, I stick my finger down his throat and laugh as he vomits all over himself. Why am I telling you this? Well, I guess I never really believed it. I mean, for me, it was just like a ghost story. A way to remember her, to remember what happened to her. Haunted flowers, death echo, phantom whispers, just a messed up urban legend. But as I watched his puke stream down his stinky clothes, it became real. Staring at me with sunken, childlike eyes, his jaw shot open, and with a trembling, swollen tongue, he uttered the first words that he had said in years. But it wasn't him. It wasn't his voice. It was hers. It was Marjorie's. She stammered, "It was all an accident. It was my fault. I fell on the shears."
This is part 2 of the scary camping story, so let's jump right back into it. The headlights swept across the park, and I saw it. It was standing at the tree line. The thing was bent over, long arms hanging to its knees, head twitching side to side like it was listening to a frequency I couldn't hear. It was pale, not white, pale like something that lives under stones, like something that never sees the sun. Its back was wrong, hunched and segmented, moving in sections like a centipede made of a human spine. I didn't wait, I drove. The wheels spun on dirt and then caught, and I was bounced back down that nameless road with the branches whipping the windshield and the rearview mirror showing nothing but dark, absolute dark. I hit pavement at 11:59. I'm at a 24-hour internet cafe called The Web. I'm typing this from booth 3. The coffee is burnt and I'm shaking so hard the keys are clicking like teeth. Even this place is wrong. An unkept woman in the corner talking to herself. I asked her if she was okay, but she started talking about herself in the collective plural as if she were a system. Like, "We are fine, leave us alone." All my gear is back at the lake, the tent, the laptop, the story I was supposed to write. I don't care about any of it. There's one thing I just don't understand. When I saw it bent over at the edge of those trees, its head came up. It looked at the car, at me, and its face. It didn't move, just smooth skin where features should be. like a thumb pressed into dough. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. But it saw me. I know it saw me, and it was hungry. Not for meat, for something else. For the space I occupy. For the shape of me in the world. It's been an hour. My heart rate is almost back to normal. I told the lady running this place what I saw, and she just laughed and said, "Should have lit a fire," and walked away. The woman in the corner lifted her head when I mentioned the lake. Until then, she just continued muttering into her coffee, answering questions nobody asked. "Don't ask strangers," she said. I stared at her. "What?" Her eyes flickered towards the computer. "We asked strangers once, and it didn't help. This place is seriously messed up. There's a guest house at the edge of town. I'm going to try and get some sleep. At first light, I'm out of here. But before I go, I need to know, has anyone else seen this? Have you seen the pale thing with the segmented back and the smooth face? Because the lady running this place just leaned in from the doorway. I didn't hear her come back. She's not laughing anymore. She wants to know why I'm asking about it to strangers. She wants to know if it spoke to me." Let me know what you thought, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
I thought somebody was stealing my mail until I found out they were putting things in my mailbox. So a few years ago, I lived in a small rental house. It was at the end of a street. It was like a dead-end kind of road. After a little while of living there, I started to notice that I would find things in my mailbox. And at first it was just small things like a button or a key or like a paper clip, just weird things. For a while there, I just figured that kids were messing around, whatever, didn't think much of it. But then I realized that it was happening every single day. I was finding a new item in there. And there was one day where I found a Polaroid picture of my front porch in my mailbox. Another day, it was a receipt from a gas station that was like 20 miles away. So none of these items were ever my items. They were somebody else's that were showing up in my mailbox. And eventually I did ask my neighbors, like, have you seen anybody near my house? Both of my neighbors told me no, and so I went and I bought like a cheap little footage security camera, and it was pointed towards my mailbox. The following day, I found a folded piece of paper in my mailbox. Now, this was icky because when I went to go check the footage, there was no person, there was no cars, there was nobody walking up to my mailbox. Somehow this note got inside of my mailbox during the night, but I didn't have any footage of it. All the note said was, "You're looking in the wrong direction." I barely slept that night. It was probably 2 a.m. and I went to go watch the live feed on my camera on my phone just to see if I could catch whatever it was. And that's when I heard a noise, not from my footage camera, but from a noise that I could hear happening in my backyard. I could hear it from my bedroom window. And obviously I had no cameras back there, so I got really creeped out and I called the police. Before they left, because they didn't find a single thing, they asked to see the note that I had, and he read it, and his face kind of changed a little bit, and he was like, "Have you had any recent work done on your house?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Are you aware that there's a crawl space under your house?" And I said, "No, I did not know that." And so the next morning we had the landlord come out, and he showed me like a door that was hidden in some bushes. The crawl space was as big as my entire house, like literally huge. So the police went and searched it, and they found a folded chair, they found food wrappers, they found a sleeping bag, and they found every item that I had found in my mailbox previously to this. It looked like the person had been living underneath my house for weeks. The note was not a threat. I think it was more of a warning, because whoever was putting things in my mailbox, I guess, was not the same person that was living underneath my house. And they never found out who left the note, and they never found out who was living underneath my house either. Obviously, the person that was under there found out that we found their home, so they left and never came back.
Many people believe that if a grave or a burial site is disturbed, it can result in a haunting. The bones or human remains that lay below become thrust up from their original resting place, and thus the spirits made angry. Well, this is allegedly the case in Chapel Street, Southport. Right in the centre of our Victorian town, Southport, stood Congregational Chapel with its own Sunday school. This is where the name Chapel Street originates from. This was demolished in 1964, following Littlewoods purchasing the land. However, today, a large Primark store now stands in that location, and they've reported some rather strange goings-on in the last place you'd expect to encounter a ghost. Now, in that same year of 1964, the House of Lords lifted burial restrictions, meaning exhumations could legally now take place. This meant almost 300 plots right in the centre of Southport were brought up from the ground. Only 3 local families were reinterred at either Duke Street Cemetery or Liverpool Road Cemetery. The rest of the bodies were cremated at Southport Crematorium. Now, only the headstones of those that were reinterred were moved along with the bodies to other local cemeteries. But what happened to the other 297 headstones? Nobody really knows. And with this in mind, it's absolutely no wonder that ghosts are now said to lurk around Chapel Street. We really do have a whole host of phantoms in the area. There's a ghostly woman seen whom wears a bonnet and a pinky red dress that walks around the area at night. Many believe she's an eccentric, that is until she vanishes into thin air. She's clearly long deceased. We also have 2 raggedy orphan-like children that are known to linger around the doors of the Primark store, believe it or not. Maybe they're wanting some new cheaper clothing from inside. No dissing. But these 2 ghostly children are said to try and approach the public before dissipating slowly before your very eyes. They don't simply vanish, they fade away. Now, what about inside the Primark store itself, which is constructed on top of a disturbed old graveyard? Well, there's mixed stories here, and it was hard to find information on hauntings as a lot of people don't wish to discuss it when there's a modern business standing there. However, I was able to ascertain from a previous employee that they did have poltergeist-like activity, things being moved around when nobody was there before the store opened to the public. Furthermore, in a particular staircase, some people claimed to feel the presence of a lady and smell her lavender-like perfume, despite nobody actually being there. It gave them a sense of the chills. So, is Chapel Street in Southport haunted? Who knows?
Messy Monday, because the trend "this is my why" turned "this is my why not" has now turned into "this is why we shouldn't lie on the internet." Michelle here posted her ex-husband to this trend saying "this is my ex-husband" with a clown emoji over his face in all of the photos. There are 4 photos total. So this is my ex-husband. Cut to the second slide. He got a wondering eye only 3 months after saying "I do." He was busy following a specific girl on Instagram while on duty. Not only did she know that he was married, she knew me too. Turns out serving and protecting didn't include protecting his marriage. Then anyways, that's my why not. Can we have a moment for my wedding dress? No, but we can have a moment for the truth, Michelle. Because I didn't see her original video. This is the video that I saw. This video shows all of those pictures scrolled through really quickly. Cut to a video of Michelle arguing with her ex-husband, but it turns out that she's the one who cheated. And the video that was posted was actually from her ex-husband's new wife. Hi everyone, I'm her ex-husband's current wife, Michelle. It's honestly really sad to see that you're still struggling after 3.5 years. To everyone who doesn't know the real story, Michelle cheated on her ex-husband multiple times throughout their 6-year relationship, and he finally found out because her friend came forward and told him. He found out just 4 months after their wedding reception and 2 weeks before their honeymoon. And in the video, you can hear him saying, "We're not going on that trip," which is what I assume now is referring to their honeymoon. I honestly feel so fucking bad for him because if you know him, he didn't deserve what she did to him. Michelle has a reputation for cheating. So tell me, is he your why not, or are you his why not? Cheers, love. Hope you heal and take accountability. P.S. She never found out who told him, and they're still friends to this day. Hashtag salty ex-wife, for you page why not. I'm not finding Michelle's video anywhere that's not one of these stitched videos or a video talking about it like mine is right now. So I'm assuming that either she deleted her account or she deleted the video, which would be smart, because why is it that people get so boldly loud online with a lie, not thinking that the truth will easily come out? Because apparently, I mean, that got some traction. And to have that video of him confronting her and going back and forth talking about what they were going to do in the separation, and she's like, "We need to talk about this," and yada yada yada. To have that after this time and then be able to utilize it again, because I'm sure that you had to utilize it in the divorce or the annulment. I don't really know how that works. That, my friend, that is like serendipitous almost. So anyway, what do we think? I think this is crazy, and I hope to see more from it. I'm not gonna lie. Let's see what Michelle has to say of herself.
Hi Daisy, I wanted to share a scary story with you that still haunts me and my mom to this day. My family has always been followed by the paranormal for some reason. I'm not sure if it was something that one of our ancestors did or if it was just bad luck. It all started when my oldest brother went missing. In my mom's desperation, she went to a man who called himself a psychic and a healer. When she reached out to him for help, he assured her that he'd be able to help her with what she was asking, as long as he got paid for it. She hoped that with his help, she would be able to locate my brother, so she had no problem paying over 50 pesos, sometimes even more, which was a lot considering we've never been a rich family. One day, he invited her over to his place. My mom always told me that when she walked into the room he had led her to, the vibe was completely different from the rest of the house. She said it felt cold and chilling, as if there was a thick pressure in the room. Well, as he got his stuff ready, my mom's eyes fell onto a statue of a black Santa Muerte, which, if you don't know, is commonly used for black magic. This was a huge red flag that my mom chose to ignore, since she felt desperate to find some sort of sign that would point her to my brother. During the time my mom was there, the man gave her a Monito Rojo, a red doll, made of cloth. He told her to keep it safe until their next meeting. The Monito Rojo gave her an uneasy, chilling feeling, but she was desperately looking for anything that could help, so she did as she was told. Well, when we went home, she put the Monito on top of a dresser where she knew it would be safe and out of reach from any kids. A few days later, the man had stopped messaging back. It was as if he had vanished from one day to another. Well, after that day, my mom went to the police station along with one of her friends who was there to comfort her. My mom talked to her over a cup of coffee as she started to tell her that after she had gone to that man, everything had been off. It was as if a fog of bad energy had been cast over the house. The dogs, who were always calm, started to become rowdy and bothered, especially at night. They would spend the whole night barking, and you know what they say about dogs, that they can see what the naked eye can't. This was obviously unusual, since our dogs had never been this rowdy, especially during the night, or at least not since she had gone there. Once my mom had told the lady about what was going on in the house became cold as ice. It was weird, since it was the middle of the summer in Mexico. My mom's friend ended up staying for the night and slept in the now spare room, the room where my mom had forgotten about the Monito on top of the dresser. That night was weirdly calm. The dogs were quiet and we were able to sleep peacefully. That was until my mom's friend told her what happened in the night. In her words, she said that she had a lucid dream. She said it was as if she couldn't move other than her head, but it wasn't any normal dream. She described it as if she was the third person. She could only see her body and the figure of a Monito choking her. She could see it happening. She could feel the desperation, but she couldn't move. After that day, my mom threw the Monito away. Little did we know, this would only be the start of it all.
A viewer that we'll call Lisa from Colorado sent me these photos, and she asked me one question. Am I losing my mind, or is there really something or someone standing inside of this glass case? Now, Lisa says that she's from Colorado, and if you're from Colorado, or if you've ever heard of the Stanley Hotel, you already know of its reputation, right? It's the hotel that actually inspired Stephen King's book and the movie, The Shining, and people have reported strange encounters there for decades. It was actually the hotel that he stayed at while writing The Shining that actually gave him a lot of its inspiration. Now, last December, Lisa and her boyfriend joined one of the hotel's ghost tours, and there were about 20 people in the group, right? Nothing unusual happened really the entire night. There were no cold spots, no voices, no moving objects. So she snapped a few photos during the tour, and she actually forgot about them. Now, a few days later, once back home, she started scrolling through them again, and one of the photos actually stood out to her and she suddenly stopped. Inside of the glass display case that should have been completely empty was what looked like a person standing there. So she checked every picture from that room, and there was nobody from the tour in the picture or in the room or that had been wearing any of those clothes, and nobody remembered standing anywhere near that case. And then her boyfriend noticed something else. In the fogged reflection near the glass, there appeared to be another face staring directly toward the camera. Now, Lisa told me that she isn't claiming that she captured a ghost or anything like that. She just wanted someone else's opinion to look at the pictures and another set of eyes, because in her words, she said, "I really hope I'm not losing my mind." Now, what's even stranger is that she grew up listening to her mother tell her stories about Native American, about a Native American man reportedly walking into a family home after his own funeral, and allegedly a patient beneath a Colorado hospital whose arm was mysteriously healed, and even a woman who people swore transformed into a bird. Now, maybe growing up around stories like that makes you notice things a little bit more, makes you a little bit more susceptible to it, or maybe some places really don't like being photographed. So I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. Here are the photos.
Let's look at some scary photos that were sent to me by you. And if you're watching this and you have a scary story, video, or photo that you want to send me, the email is in my bio. This is a picture of my older sister when she was Snapchatting with her friends at night. It happened years ago, and I was actually sleeping in the same room as her. So at first, she thought that I was the one that appeared in the photo, but she very quickly realized that I had been asleep the whole time. This is a screenshot I took from a video that I sent my friend when I moved into a new house. I was showing her the view from my balcony, and when she watched the video back, she noticed this and sent me the screenshot. This happened on the very first night that I stayed in that house, and ever since then, we have heard continuous banging on doors from whatever floor we weren't on.
So I have a story time for you guys. I was just in my room with my little sister, and she decided she wanted to tell me about this weird encounter that she had while she was praying. So she said this took place about 2 or 3 years ago, and she was at like one of her lowest moments in her whole entire life. She felt so depressed at this time. She felt so dissociated with everyone and even the Lord. She wasn't reading her Bible. She wasn't going to church. Every time the thought of the Lord popped up in her head, she somehow got distracted and was just like, I feel like more things are important right now. One night, she felt the urge and the Holy Spirit on her heart tell her, like, we gotta pray. We gotta get back on our Zoom with the Lord. She gets on her knees and she starts praying. But while she's praying out loud. Now, if some of you don't know, it's not necessarily always bad to pray out loud, but sometimes it can be bad, especially if you're asking the Lord for something specific, because you could be asking the Lord for something and you don't know what is listening or ear hustling on your conversation with God. They might try to bless you with that blessing that you're asking for, acting as if it's God, and it's a whole different thing. But once again, that's not like always the type of like game that they play. She starts praying out loud, not asking for nothing, but she's just like, Lord, I ask that you come back into my life and things get easier and things of that sort. And the whole entire time she's praying, she's hearing footsteps outside of her door. Her door is closed, and before she even started praying, when she went to the bathroom, she made sure that everybody in the house was asleep. The only one that was awake, it was pretty late at night, so on the normal, everybody in the house would be asleep at this time. She's hearing it and she's getting like curious, like what is that? But she doesn't want to let the spirit of fear overcome her situation and overcome her conversation with the Lord right now. It's running back and forth. Whatever it was just, you heard footsteps going back and forth right outside of her door. Up until she said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, and I ask the Lord to take out any negative energy, forces, or anything that's in this house. I ask that the Lord takes it out in the mighty name of Jesus. Once she said that, the footsteps ran up to her door and it stopped. She didn't hear it again once she took that pause after that prayer. She got up and she went to lay in her bed. But as she's going to lay in her bed, she's saying to herself, like, I feel like the Lord is testing my faith right now. I'm going to go ahead and, show the Lord that I can stand 10 toes. So while she's going to lay down and go to sleep, she's scared of the dark, first of all, to go to sleep in the dark. But she tells herself, like, I'm not going to let, whatever that was outside of my door interfere with me and my faith. So she turns off all the lights in her room and she lays with her back facing the open area. She never ever would do, but she ended up doing in this situation. She's laying down facing the wall. She starts praying in her head this time, and she's once again hearing noises and stuff. It doesn't come close to the door. It doesn't come in the door, but as she says, in the mighty name of Jesus, I rebuke you. When she said amen, that's when the footsteps and all that stopped once again. And she said this happened not only for one night, this happened for 3 nights straight. And she was praying like every day after this. But yeah, she said that she prayed up until she fell asleep. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the story time. Make sure you guys comment your opinions and follow me for more.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
I'm actually about to enter one of the most haunted stores in and around Houston, Texas, by myself. It's actually located here in Old Town Spring, and it's called the Dark Side of Spring. What makes this place even more haunted is not only its location and history, but the fact that they have one of the largest haunted doll collections that I've ever seen. I mean, everything's big in Texas, right? I'm actually doing an event this coming Saturday where you get to meet these dolls, and you actually get to hear their backstories, and it's going to be this coming Saturday, June 27th at 7:30 at the Dark Side of Spring Boutique. Actually, come inside, come and meet them. Here it is. Ain't she a beaut? Oof. Hi, friend. Hey, ladies. Hi. Hi. I feel like I should leave this door open. By the way, there is something in the corner of this shop. So real quickly, the owner, Lisa Hall, has this eclectic and very large collection of haunted dolls. There's Tay, Sheila, and Becky with the good hair. And she is still buying more, but each of these dolls has a story. They have something attached to them. And there's a couple of them where I was told that if you want to hold one of them, you have to wear a pair of gloves. What am I doing here? Well, I am dropping off a couple of flyers because this coming Saturday, as I mentioned, I am doing an event here called the Night of the Living Dolls. So you get to meet a lot of these dolls in person, and you get to hear their backstory, their ghost stories, what has happened in the shop ever since those dolls came in here. You can come into the shop to purchase tickets. We'll have the flyer and the QR code here, or you could go to my bio and click on the link and it'll take you to my Eventbrite. Tickets are $25 and that includes 2.5 hours of listening to ghost stories connected to these dolls. So the first hour is going to be meeting the dolls, hearing their ghost stories, and then we're gonna do a little EVP session and a dead bell session with them. And then the next hour, we're actually going to do a ghost hunt in and around Spring, Texas, and one of the dolls is going to join us as a trigger object. I'm hearing a lot of things. And on top of everything, Lisa happened to have purchased a brand new doll, so she's going to unveil her. And let me tell you, I really like her. I think she has a great personality, and I think she'll be wonderful with the rest of the girls. So join me this coming Saturday and stay haunted and stay weird, Houston.
Hi guys, story time. I didn't sleep very well last night. I went down a rabbit hole, which was very stupid of me, for one, okay? I went down the rabbit hole of the historic ginormous snake. It's like Titanoboa or something like that. Anyways, I'm terrified of snakes. I hate them. They freak me out. But I've been watching these creators that have a lot of reptiles, a lot of animals. I love animals. I mean, I have 5 dogs and 4 cats. I'm obsessed with animals. Everybody calls me Snow White because excuse me, animals gravitate to me a lot. Anyways, so I went down that rabbit hole, which kind of like gave me the heebie-jeebies. And apparently some billionaire had one locked up in some room. I don't know. Like, it's hard to, what do you believe at this point? Also, there was like a pilot that saw a 100-foot one with a big three-foot head. And okay, the other thing is I am moving my warehouse. So I am moving to a new building, which is fantastic. The one that we are in right now is a historical building. It really, at this point, it just needs to be demolished. Has a lot of problems, but it also has a ghost friend. And I'm gifted, so I can pick up on things. So I knew it was there for a while. There's one area of that warehouse that I won't go because I know that it's there. So there was a picture taken and our friend made an appearance, and I don't know if he's saying, yes, I'm real, or he's sad to see us go. Either way, but I will tell you that it's a real picture. It's not AI, it's not photoshopped. I'm gonna include it here and you can see for yourself. He likes to play with red balls. I do know that. That's what the warehouse guys told me. And yeah, so tell me what you think in the comments when you look at this picture. I hope I get better sleep tonight. I love you guys. Talk to you soon.
These are a list of reasons that someone may be doing brujeria on you. Number 1, you become obsessed with a specific person that you had never really thought of before. Someone that you could care less about, but now you can't get them out of your mind. That's not normal. Number 2, you start having very vivid dreams about that specific person when you know you don't think about this person, but for whatever reason, you can't get them out of your head even when you're asleep. Number 3, you randomly hear notifications or your phone going off, but when you go to check your phone, there's nothing there. That is something trying to get your attention or to try to distract you. Number 4, you start having arguments and tensions with your loved ones. That is something trying to isolate you so they can have you all to themselves and they can attack you even more because now you're away from all the people that you love. And 5, your mood flips for absolutely no reason. One day you're super happy, the next hour you're like moody, you're back to happy, you're anxious, you're having panic attacks. None of that is normal. That means that something is seeking into your energy levels, which is affecting your moods. That means that it's time for a cleansing. I can make a whole separate video on cleansings. I feel like that's like the number 1 question that I get asked the most. Let me know if you guys want a part 2.